Good morning. I am very curious about this this conversation this morning. I'd like us to take on a relatively serious note, kind of a serious time together. I have been noticing for a while that when someone asks me the question, "How are you?" I don't know the answer. And at first, it was lighthearted. How are you? I don't know. But I realized that sometimes we don't pay attention to our own speaking. And I began to notice it pretty persistently. When someone asked the question, "How are you?" I really did have to answer, "I don't know. I don't know how I am." So this morning, one of my favorite people, she builds these drums that literally 26 people can stand in a circle around and drum. She carries them all over Ireland. Her name's Elaine. But she wrote me this morning. I don't ever look at messengers, so it was actually a while back on my birthday, about a month ago, and asked me how I was. And then Paul, also an Irishman, a psychic, clairvoyant, he asked me how I was. And so I began to look at this morning with the conversation. What is that? What is that question? How are you? And for you, what would you answer? I suppose we could go theoretical and we could say that how are you is in relationship to what? And is it possible that the question, how are you, is obsolete? Is it possible that this sense of I is too narrow a framework to answer that question? I don't know. I noticed it always bothered me, the question, simply because in relationship to what? How I am. So for instance, this morning at Lone Pine, California, we had a 6.0 earthquake. That I say we because I consider myself a Californian. I was born in Oakland, California, even though I lived a tremendous amount of my life, 60 years exactly, away from California. So how am I with a 6.0 earthquake near Death Valley in California? I'm not okay, but I'm not bad. I'm just watching. I have people I love, besides people in general, that live in San Diego and Walnut Creek and Castro Valley and we've been watching the ground shake in California more pointedly, more consistently over the past few months. So I could answer, how am I? I'm watching and caring and staying alert with as little anxiety as I can muster. So that's one, how am I? Just take a minute. How are you in relationship to what? Perhaps in relationship to what matters to you. So maybe we could say, when that question is asked, how are you? We could say, in regard to what matters to me, I have a mixed bag. If I look at my personal, how am I, my physical world, we're going to hit 99 today. Lily has a heart condition. So we pretty much get to live in the RV today with the air conditioning on because her black fur and her heart don't do well, pretty much above 80. How am I about that? That matters to me. Privileged. I feel privileged that I've had an animal live with me for almost 16 years now in an intimate, private companionship like no other. So if someone asks me, how am I would say, well, in regard to Lily, who matters to me, in regard to the people in California that matter to me, this is how I am. In regard to Lily, I feel privileged that, and okay to take the time to not let her out in the heat. It feels good, loving. In regard to the shaking earth, because right now, if you look at an earthquake map, there's a persistent quaking happening from Alaska and above all the way down to the tip of South America. So in regard to the earthquake that happened in Lone Pine, California, how am I about that? Nervous. But nervous, on alert, with as little anxiety as possible. Because if you're anxious, your instincts don't work very well. And if I'm anxious, my psychic ability doesn't work very well. And I've been developing, hopefully, a skill. It has shown itself a few times. A skill that if I know that I need to text Liz and Deb and Tony and whoever else, that I'll know to, some instinct in me in my unity with others, will use a skill set I have and will respond. And I'm nervous that I won't meet the measure of the measure I'd like to meet on behalf of my beloveds, with as little anxiety as possible. So that question, how are you? It sounds sort of snappy to say in regard to what, but maybe that question is interrupting a social norm. I know for me, I appreciate the answer to the question, but I also don't ask it. Because it borderlines on fake intimacy. And yet at the very same time, it gives us the opportunity for deep intimacy. How are you in regard to the world in general? Crazy times. I don't know how I am. On alert, with as little anxiety as possible. Balancing it with appreciating every minute of my existence. I woke up this morning, I actually left the door open. I've got really heavy screens so that Lily can go in and out at night. But it was muggy. And I woke up this morning and had a raspy throat, which you can probably hear. And I went to take Lily for her walk and threw on some clothes that were a little warm for the season. But by the time I got halfway around our walk, I was really sweating. And I was nervous about that. But I was nervous with as little anxiety as possible. So I came back and found the homeopathic remedy for that you take in regard to the virus, and I went straight into protocol. I have a very specific protocol. I have nose drops that I take to keep my passageways and my nose clear of any bacterial or viral infection. I can take up to 5 tablespoons of colloidal silver, which I did. I also take an active relationship with something called Liquid Gold RX that improves the immunity system of the body. You can't get up there. That's a chair. Do you want to say hi to everybody? Huh? Do you want to say hi? You want to come up? Whoa. You want to come say hi? Okay. Sorry about that. She's practicing life with as little anxiety as possible. So I really was sweating, so I looked up I Googled humidity, and the humidity was 48%. And then by the time I'd switched into my cooler clothes, I wasn't sweating at all. And I'm fine. But I still put it out on transmutative wholeness, just in case. And I do think I'm fine. And then I thought, wow, how can you walk into a Facebook Live where your commitment is to have a safe and sacred space for people to rest? and to be in conversations that allow us to rest, allow us to take a minute to not be anxious. But then I think we need to answer the question today, how are we? Really? Because how are we is not a blanket answer anymore. In regard to my personal life, I am kick butt awesome. In regard to the fact that the Supreme Court is looking at abolishing affordable care, I feel nauseous. Reading about the fact that there's an old law that allowed ranchers, when they first came to these states, they weren't states then, Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, California, New Mexico, there was a rampant killing of wildlife to make room for beef and farming. So there's been a law in the books forever. You can't do that. Only they are again. And nobody's stopping them. How are we in the face of that? How am I in the face of what I'm helpless to stop? Helpless to affect. How am I when I feel helpless? I always start with feeling helpless with as little anxiety as possible. But I'm also not all right with it. I'm not all right. In the book, Language of Creation, we talk about two distinct realities. These are structures of realities, within which certain types of existence take place. So in a reality of separation, how it's identifiable is you're either for or against. In a reality of unity, you are both and. You're both okay and not okay. Reality of separation, you're either not okay or you are okay. And I think that question, how are you, comes from that archaic realm of separation, of a reality of separation that is checking into either you are or you aren't okay. But in a reality of unity, that's a structure of consciousness within which certain types of existence rise. I live there. Then you're both and. With as little anxiety as possible. When we use the word observing, we often misunderstand it. It means observing dispassionately. When we say, I'm only here to observe. It's another one. It's another word that we should really look at. You should really, I recommend, I hate the word should, I apologize, but I recommend that you actually inquire into the question, how are you? And get yourself settled about it. We call it in the creation exercises, the observing being exercise. I'm observing being anxious about the heat in Lily with as little anxiety as possible. I notice being really glad the sweating stopped and that I feel perfectly normal now and that it was the humidity. I feel good about that. Because I really think the question, how am I, matters. I think that it is very connected to the observing and observing being exercise and the creation exercises. Because if we can't register where we are, we have no ability to be related to ourself or our world. And if we can get over ourselves about the answer to how are you is what? Who can write it out? I'm fine. What I is fine. I definitely am fine. There's no doubt about it. But that doesn't mean I'm all right about everything. I'm definitely fine about being alive. I'm really good on that one. Definitely fine about where I live. Definitely fine about my dog and my friends and my children and my work. Those are all fines. I have an equal list of I am not fine. I am not fine that I live in an RV park and that I can't use the bathrooms, won't use the bathrooms, and won't use the laundry room because it's where people coming from all over the United States are stopping to do their laundry and take a shower. I'm not fine. I'm not fine with that. I was fine when they had the bathrooms closed. But see, the I'm fine and the I'm helpless to impact something, they fit. They're they like this. They weave together. Because pretty much I'm not fine is being helpless in the face of something. Pretty much. Try it out. Take a second. I feel helpless in the face of something. And then we should probably ask the question, well, are you in this moment? Because we only have this moment. Yeah, I'm pretty helpless. I can't shut the bathrooms or close the laundry to people that don't live here. And then that brings us to confronting our own helplessness. Okay? Can we just allow for that today? The human ego is so fragile. The last thing it ever wants to answer, well, the thing it always wants to answer is I'm fine. It's like a parrot. But rarely do we want to answer, I feel helpless. Then examining this common 3 words that we use all the time. What is the effect you want to have on the person who asks the question? Who are you going to say it to? And how well can they take the answer? There's a lady, she's a homeless lady. She sits on a park bench in this little teeny kind of alcove park. It's just a little teeny place. And she sits there to sleep. So in the morning sometimes you can see her head on her very ample breast, sleeping with all her bits gathered about her. And every now and then she's someplace where I can bring her. She has this favorite drink. It's a green passion drink at Panera. So every now and then I bring her the drink when it's easy access, because she doesn't like to be startled when she's by the road. So the other day they don't have They don't have green passion right now. They're out of a lot of stuff because of everything that's been going on. And but she'd stepped away from her bench, which is not too accessible. Um, really keep writing what you're fine about and what you're not. Let's get it out. Let's get it done. Let's get ourselves handled. Our friend Jay just showed up. Bird Jay. He may sit. I don't think he'll sit behind me with this umbrella over me, but we'll see what he does. He's near Lily. Let's take this moment to get it said. How did we withhold here? You know, it's either being good soldiers or proper. Not today. Not today. Take a minute, get it said. Because right now, if somebody's fine about everything, I would probably recommend a lobotomy. Not a lobotomy, electrical shock. I would think they'd had a lobotomy. Can we be that intimate with each other? Can we truly answer the question, how are you? So anyway, she was walking down the road. Her vigil, her journey is between McDonald's and her park bench. So I stopped and I said, hi, they don't have green passion drinks anymore, or right now, or I would have gotten you one. She said, thank you. And I said, how are you doing in the heat? And she says, well enough. And then she says, how are you doing in the heat? And I said, well enough. My dog has a heart condition, and so I have to keep her where she's cool. And she said, yeah. She said, one of my dogs I had, they died of the heat. I said, oh, I'm so sorry. And she said, I'm sorry too. And then I said, would you like a latte? I can get you a chai latte. I'm going to get one for myself. And she said, yes. So that how are you in this heat? We're closer now. We're more intimate. And plus I now know she likes chai latte as well as the green passion drink. Why? Because she was in my path. She's in my path. So I think that how are you is our way of interacting with someone in our path. You're in my path today. How are you? Notice if you're nervous about saying. Notice if you feel socially incorrect or not wanting to be visible or not wanting to answer. It's okay. Honest it is. But today I'm going to unearth that question. I'm going to give it some space. I'm going to shake out its laundry. I'm going to hang it in the air. I'm going to give it to the sunshine. But the question is, Gisela and Neve, how are you? Honestly. It's okay, everybody. Especially when you're telling me. What are we fine about? But what are we not fine about? Let's lay it out. You know why? Because creation's listening. Perhaps how are you is our prayer to one another so that creation can listen. For those of you that came on a little late, I did my best to try to warn people today was going to be a serious day. Today was going to be a working day. We were going to take this hour to reveal the heart of ourselves, either privately, because you can't miss the question, can you? You might not type the answer, but you can't miss the question. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry to put you on the hot seat, especially my young'uns. But you gotta say the word how are you, the three words how are you are never going to be the same again, are they? Never. I have ruined their social paradigm, hopefully. And then you'll have to confront something that every human being should confront right now. Honest. How are you with another? Can you genuinely ask that question? And are you able to genuinely be in the face of the answer? Because it's got to go somewhere. And the United States is the most suppressed country. I could speak of a few other countries too. Because all we're really allowed to say is, how are you? I'm fine. As if it's a badge of courage. As if it's a badge of honor. Fine in the face of what? Our head in the sand? Our not paying attention and staying in our own little corner? You know, I had a vision. I have lots of visions. But they usually circle around this time that we're in now. It was a while ago. I had a vision of all the American people who live in their fine houses that don't even know their neighbors. And I was listening in this vision. They were all watching TV and opinionating and going to lunch and opinionating. But then one day, the problem they were opinionating about showed up on their doorstep. Thank you, Liz. Elaine, this all started because of you. I'm coming to Ireland next year, and we're going to tour with that drum because we need to answer the earth. We need to tell her how we are. I hope you go to the beginning of this question, because it all started, Elaine, when I read the message from a while back in Messenger, where he asked me, how am I? And I haven't been able to answer that question for a few months. But then I suddenly realized when you asked it, because you carry the sound of the mother drum, you carry the sound of the mother drum in you, then I could hear the mother. I could hear the mother saying, how are you? So this whole time we've been together, I've been dismantling the social nicety of the phrase, how are you? Figured you'd appreciate that. And also, hopefully, dismantling the social nicety of I'm fine. That's certainly an American gizmo. And I've invited people to actually write on the screen, or whatever it's called, Facebook, what we're fine about and what we're not fine about. Because we're going to topple if things get worse and if things begin to become more pandemic in many, many areas. If we don't get it, we don't have a place to drum, to say where we're not fine, especially where we feel helpless in the face of it. We're not going to be fine, ladies. No gentlemen so far. Do you understand? Oh my God. Write it in Gaelic, Neve. How is your courage? Oh my God. Imagine. Imagine. I think that's going to become our salutation in the people close to me. Oh my God. Can you write it in Gaelic? Does anybody know the Gaelic of it? How is your courage? I don't know is my answer. It's requiring a lot. When I got up this morning and I was sweating, and Deborah, you came into a very strong, serious, deep conversation. So hang on. We're still in it. Ride the wave. There's a difference between talking about life and living it. We're going to live it today. You're always welcome to pop off. But whoever's going to hang with me today, we're going to live it. We feel helpless in many areas. Ah, bless you. Shlanka. We feel helpless in many areas. And you know what? We gotta be fine. Not fine because. We've got to have courage. Sacred space for rest and courage. That's this place. Ah, a sacred space for rest and courage. So I think I'm going to ask that question because that's the right question for the times. In Dominher, Italy, Falco Alberto, he died quite a few years ago, but he left letters to read to the people of Dominher over the years. And the letter he wrote recently was about courage. It's about courage. And it's why a few years ago I created this site. Because whoever showed up, even if it's just me, whoever shows up, we have a minute to rest. A safe space to rest and to build courage. And then when we use the phrase, we're inventing all this as we go, okay? As we use the phrase, I'm fine or I'm not fine, we're answering the level of our courage in the moment. In the moment. Thank you, Kea. In the moment. One of the things, Lily's gone through episodes, and my dog, for those who don't know, the last few years, and the particular type of death, given where her heart issue is, could be very painful to watch and very hard on her. So I knew I needed to have courage about that. And last night when she was panting heavily, which we never know if it's the humidity or her heart, I realized I had the courage. I had the courage. I had it. But it's taken 4 years of not being courageous to get to it. Good morning, my beloved Teresa. So for those of you who want to, I really recommend that you watch this Facebook Live in your own privacy. It will help. I know I'm putting everyone on the spot. Sort of my gig, isn't it? And we're so afraid to say we're not courageous about certain things in a certain moment. And yet how many of us have carried wounds and heartbreak and loss and had those moments where we stood up and stunned ourselves, and then we're nervous in the memory of it. I think that's the thing to do next year, Elaine. I think we need to build a sacred space for rest and courage with the mother. Thank you, Amy. I love my Jackie. She gets me into such trouble. And you know what? We need to be okay. And we aren't going to be sometimes. We're not. And we're not going to know if we're fine or not. My God, we don't even know what the news is going to say the next day, much less if we're going to wake up sweaty and afraid that we have the virus. So this all began, for those of you who just came on, with the conversation of answering the question, how are you? And the fact that over the last few months I haven't been able to answer the question because I can't say I'm fine and I'm not fine. It doesn't cover the territory that I'm paying attention to. And I'm fine about Jackie getting me into trouble too. The lighthearted aspect of our shared field of doing whatever we can, wherever we can. And we do have the power of our etheric natures. We have the power of prayer, that's etheric. We have the power of creative thinking, that's etheric. We have the power of love, that's etheric. We have the power of caring, that's etheric. And I think Gisela said love, and Neve said the power to be, that's etheric. So we have our ethers. Love, airplane. That's why I know what time it is. So we have the power of our ethers. Build them. Build the strength. Because courage lies in the etheric plane. It's a printout of the etheric plane. What would courage be the printout of? What would be the alchemy? What would be the magic formula? Probably love and caring. Wouldn't you say that courage is building a alchemical ether of love and courage? Love and caring. I think for me, love and caring would build my courage. What would build yours? Frankly, doing this Facebook Live builds my courage. And this just incredible people that have never, youngsters is under 40, by the way, at 74, just thanking me for this site. And I really started it because Jackie said I needed to have time. Kindness, that's a good one. Love, caring, kindness, that builds our courage. A sacred space for rest and courage is you. You are the sacred space for rest and courage. You are that. We are that. So that's really the last piece I wanted to say, is that there is an action that we can take. We can build kindness in ourselves. We can build caring in ourselves. We can build love in ourselves. We can build the strength of ourselves in the face of helplessness, the strength of our character. In the beginning of this call, I kept using a phrase, which is what I'm going to complete the call with. If I could answer the question, how am I? In regard to my personal life, I'm great. I have ways of taking care of myself. I'm in the company of people that inquire, explore, discover, build their alchemy of their consciousness. It couldn't be better. In regard to the world, I'm frightened for our world. It isn't enough for me to be okay, to be fine only for myself. That's not okay with me. That's not fine. So I'm not fine for a large amount of people in the world. And I am helpless in the face of doing anything about that at the scale I want to. It's why I work in the etherics. It's why I work in what you might call prayer, which is like the phrase, how are you? It doesn't cover enough territory. It doesn't give you enough bandwidth. It doesn't really answer your question. What is prayer for you? What is, how are you for you? What is your answer? How are you? How are you going to answer? Because I need to start answering that question. And when Elaine wrote, how are you? I knew I had to answer her. So how are you? In regard to what? You choose. And learn to answer. Because there is a consciousness from which we are all made that is listening. This how are you is a very important question. Because it shows you where to build and what to build and how to build your relationship to life. So see, what if we could really answer the question? The part of me that is holy is taking care of things. The part of me that loves my dog is being kind. The part of me that really honestly bleeds for humanity is not okay. So I take care of that part of me that's not okay. How about you? We've covered a few topics today. Probably the question, how are you, is going to be an interesting adventure now. Maybe a very confronting one, when we know that we don't feel the courage to tell the truth. By the way, it isn't a blemish on your character. There's probably more we don't know how we are about, because we're not in the confront of it. I don't know how I'd feel if I had a policeman's foot on my neck. Can't imagine. I'd probably be pretty pissed. but I wouldn't be fine. So let's get our territory bigger, okay? Instead of just reporting on whether you got your groceries or whether you feel okay because you're not sniffling or whether you have enough money to get through the day, why don't you take a little bit of time to expand your bandwidth? Because there's a lot of us that will be okay. And there is something in psychology called survivor guilt. I'm probably going to bring this topic up again next week. Because we need to get at this. Our humanity needs to get at this. My holiness, my spirituality, it's good. It's good. Don't mess with me. I'm good. I love the people of this creature called Earth. I love her forms called human beings. I adore them. And I'm pretty responsible when I'm in the face of them being abused. I step in. I'm pretty good at that. But that's me. Some of us do it in the privacy of our own home. Some of us do it by watching the news or not watching the news because we don't want to quit. We don't want our anxiety to build. We want to stay present to life and its happiness and its joy and its freedom. We don't want to lose that because if we lose it, others may lose it too because we're part of the collective. So I'm all for that. I'm all for spiritual practices. I'm all for building etheric territories. I'm all for us gathering together and strengthening the collective field by who we be and who we be together. I've never been anything but that. But we need the other two. We need to not be scared to say, I feel helpless in the face of whatever. And it's beautiful. I want somebody to send me the audio of that, of how is your courage, so I can pronounce it right. The Gaelic doesn't lend itself well to the written word being phonetically correct for a non-Gaelic speaker. Okay, just a little. I know I've wrecked a paradigm called how are you? I know that even if you hear yourself say you're fine, that your neural wiring will begin to trace your bandwidth, trace all the territories you're part of, all the things that matter to you. And you will probably do a checklist in your neural wiring. I'm fine about that. I'm not fine about that. I'm fine about that. And then, how is my courage? How is my courage? Thank you, Gail. That's that listening thing. You'll love the beginning. Well, I think you'll love the beginning of this conversation. Because there is the observer that's listening. And listening is where consciousness fulfills on itself. But we'll get into that. So I'm having this thought. Trudy, the bag lady, in the book by Clarice Estes about courage, Women Who Dance with Wolves. Trudy, the bag lady, says that she gave up reality because it was just too hard on her. And now her days are jam-packed and fun-filled. And we should listen to Trudy. But confronted with what others are confronting, we need to have a response capacity. We do. Both and, not either or. Because our neural wiring is busy, but our emotional, empathic field needs to build its strength, stamina, capacity. Because whether we like it or not, we are empathically related to everything that lives, exists. We're empathically related to that. So if some of you would like to unpack this particular conversation, and see what you're using to bring anything you have to share to the party about it, and anything you might want me to go into next Friday. I promise to read the comments on Sacred Space for Rest and Courage group. Let's get to it. Let's just take this space and build courage and build the resting state that we all need. Let's build the capacity for our response level. Let's build the ability to come together and decrease collective anxiety. Look, there's no real worth in a single individual right now. Buddha said it forever. My value, my capacity, my skill is only comparable to who I can be with myself, with another, and with life. It's a triad. It's a trinity. And I don't know about other countries, but the identity of the individual in the United States has become a dogma, propaganda, except for the young people. If you ask them how their courage is, they'd say, I'm fine. And I'm scared. And I'm worried. Beautiful. Unpacking our consciousness, unpacking our humanity. I had a reading yesterday. I need to stop, I think. I think it's an hour. I usually try not to go very long, and I'm really rattling this morning. I'm heavy with this. I'm heavy with it. I'm saturated with it. I'm stoned with it. I'm pushed with it. I'm everything with this. How are you? Damned if I know. But since you asked, here's my answer. I had a young woman I read yesterday, and when I read her, she didn't come from karma or dharma. She actually came as a free spirit. And her friends were saying she needed to do something with that, be more present in the world, accomplish more, be more known. And I said, why? Are you doing what you love? Yes. Is where you are having the impact consistent with what you'd like to impact where you are? Yes. Then don't listen. What I said to her, it's going to matter each one of us individually, not as individuals, but individually. It's going to matter where we're standing. It's going to matter how we build our capacities to be. It's going to matter. It'll influence outcome. But most important, it's important to remember the gift of being human, and that we were created because it was a gift. Namaste.